Hello, everybody. Welcome to the OAC TV's September broadcast. I'm James Zervios.
I'm Christy Kuna. We're so happy to be with you on the official first day of fall, September 22nd.
Yes, the last broadcast, Christy, we told everybody that fall was knocking on the door, and it's finally here.
So. And coincidentally, the next one was on the first day of fall. I personally decorated for fall last night, so I'm in the mode, and I know like pumpkin spice is out.
Pumpkin spice, everything. I've seen pumpkin spice masks. I've seen, obviously,
scented
the coffee.
Ones, right?
I did buy the pumpkin spice M&Ms once at Target, and they weren't very good at all. It's just not a flavor combination that you want to try.
Well, lots in store. Already got some good recommendations, but today is all about childhood obesity, and since it is Childhood Obesity Awareness Month, today's whole broadcast is dedicated to the topic, but also the implications of childhood obesity, such as weight-based bullying.
Yeah, and so today we have with us a very special guest. The title of our broadcast today is going to be Childhood Obesity, Facts, Bullying, and How to Make a Difference. And our special guest today to talk about that will be Dr. Rebecca Pearl. We've worked with Dr. Pearl in the past. You may have seen her at our annual convention. She's been a part of the magazine. Phenomenal speaker. Looking forward to having her on a little bit later in the broadcast.
Absolutely. So, we are always so excited to do these broadcasts to connect with you guys at home. So we're going to take a quick hi to say hi to everyone who is joining us online. We have, of course, Shelly from Temecula. Shelly, so happy to have you on here.
I see we have Debbie from Dallas. How you doing, Debbie?
Debbie, and we have Robert from, I think it's Minnesota, saying hello.
I think they were getting a cold front. Robert, how's fall going for you guys up there? I'm not sure.
Fall here is in the 90s. We're in Tampa, Florida, so this is our fall weather here. But yeah, so lots in store today. Keep the conversation going in that chat because we have
giveaways. You know the drill. You have to comment in the chat to be eligible for a giveaway, and we've got some great ones here today. We've got a beautiful Stop Weight Bias bag tote. This would be perfect for groceries. I'd say the beach, although it could get sandy, but to each his own.
Sure, and we also have, also from the Stop Weight Bias campaign, our campaign mug. Great, because fall's coming. You can put your cocoa in here, your coffee. I know we have lots of coffee drinkers out there. So keep those comments going so that we can make sure you may be one of the lucky winners of this giveaway. So I think it's time we can dive into kind of the first part of what we always dedicate this broadcast to is just some updates, keeping you all informed of what's happening. And I think we should start with advocacy first.
Yeah, and so TROA, you guys often hear us talk about the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, but Christy, this is a pretty big update here. I mean, we've got a lot of exciting news in store for the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. We have officially broken 100 co-sponsors on this very important legislation. That is a huge benchmark as we continue to work with our legislative leaders to try to advocate for this very important legislation. Now, with that being said, this is a very, very key time, especially for this legislation, because we need all of you watching to advocate for the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. And you can do this very easily by going to obesityaction.org/action. And on that page, you're going to see our spotlight action will be the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. Very simple to contact your legislator. Type your name in, zip code, hit send, and you've basically done your part. You've raised awareness, and you're taking action for the OAC.
Yeah, and we know so many of you watching right now who are really, fellows or supporters and those longtime supporters. Even if you have done the Action Center on the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, do it again. We are trying to make so much noise with this. It is a big update, so we'll keep you guys posted along the way with that, but we appreciate everybody's action. It doesn't honestly take much time, just a couple clicks, and make sure you add your personal story there too, because it really does make a difference. So shifting gears a little bit, we also want to let you guys know about an upcoming event and educational opportunity, and that is in the form of OAC Health Talks. We did debut our first health talk just a couple months ago, and it was really well received. So our second one is officially taking place October 14th at 7 o'clock Eastern. So make sure it's October 14th, 7 o'clock Eastern. It's going to feature the topic on why moving more and eating less is not that simple solution to obesity. And I think this is something
well, you hear that all the time.
All the time. And we're so lucky and excited to have Sarah Muntel, who is a registered dietitian, but has been a long time, amazing supporter. She writes for our magazine, speaks at convention, just works, just her everyday life in the patient community. So
yeah, she's phenomenal. I mean, Sarah has been around with OAC for many, 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 many years. She's
yeah,
a
so
great
if you're
contributor.
interested in this topic, please sign up in advance. You'll get those alerts when the event is taking place. And you can do that at obesityaction.org/health talks. And it's free. I think it's good and important to mention. This is one of the free educational initiatives that we offer. So definitely do that. And it'll be live streamed on October 14th at 7 o'clock Eastern.
We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
Last week was a pretty big week for obesity in general. There were two big reports that were released. One was from the Trust for America's Health, and the other was a CDC report. Now, Christy, I know we've always talked about these reports internally here at OAC, and we do actually leverage a lot of the content from them because they are very, very valuable reports. For those tuning in, the State of Obesity report by the Trust for America's Health essentially saying this is what obesity is shaping up as for this year. The CDC report focused specifically on childhood obesity, which is a very relevant to today's topic. And that one talked about how COVID-19 really made childhood obesity worse in a lot of ways, right? So if children were inside more, they were just, they weren't going to school, they were doing at home school. OAC released a statement on both of these reports. The statement was from OAC President and CEO Joseph Naglowski, and he brought up two very important points with these reports. One, they don't really talk about access to care or weight bias. And two, they still do not discuss the lived experience of obesity, right? Living with obesity. And, I think it was really interesting, Joe's sentiment on these and the statement that was released on behalf of the organization, because a lot of times, and we see these reports in a lot of ways, that they kind of come out and they say, here's the problem, and this is what it is. It's getting worse. But we as an organization, right, we exist to fight to help people with obesity, but yet you don't see these reports ever talking about access bias or the lived experience.
And I think that's what's so important is that while I think the everyday person watching, and myself included, it's like, well, how does this really impact me? But these reports are having a responsibility. They're shaping some of the narrative that we hear. And so it is so important that the OAC speaks up in this realm, because that is how we get to really fill those gaps of that misinformation, or not even misinformation, but just this lack of understanding, and also where the dialogue needs to happen. I think one of my pet peeves is in the summarized article that CNN put out about the report really just pointed to the actionable measures to reduce childhood obesity is, of course, get moving, better nutrition, and reduce screen time. So we hear that all the time. But we know that there's so much more to it. It's so complex, and sometimes it's a little short-sighted that we see. So I was really happy to see the OAC speaking out on behalf of folks to make sure that the narrative keeps changing. That's how we really put that pressure on.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and we're actually going to talk a little bit today about, and this is a great segue for our next update that you can speak to, about how that lived experience is so valuable and so important. And it's short-sighted, I'll be honest, it is, to just keep saying, eat less, move more, whether it's adult obesity, but you see it so much in childhood obesity. It's the same one. Less screen time, get them a soccer ball, and get some healthy vegetables on the plate, which, yes, we all know that physical activity and nutrition are important, but it's still watering it down way too much.
The dialogue definitely needs to change, and so that's why, during September, which is Childhood Obesity Awareness Month, OAC has that opportunity to kind of shape the narrative. And one of the ways that we are doing this is focusing on one of the implications of bias in children, which is weight-based bullying. So we all know that, as adults, weight stigma is very real, that it's something that folks face and have faced for a very long time. But we focused our efforts this month on really looking at the implications also of weight-based bullying. And so we've launched a fundraising campaign to support this effort, because OAC is very committed to ensuring that all these conversations continue, but we provide the right support and educational resources to those needing it. And one of these great examples is one of the stories that was shared for our fundraising campaign was by a young person named Seth. And Seth is, I think, a 6th grader, and so bravely shared his story. You can see a little bit of this shared here, but really his experience was just that he had faced weight-based bullying as a young person. He's obviously grown up a little bit more, but how it's really stuck with him and how it really just made his self-image something that was not positive. So Seth we're so grateful that he shared his story. This is part of this fundraising campaign that we've launched in recognition of this. You might receive this in the mail pretty soon, so this is the solicitation for it, but really does have Seth's story on the back here, but really highlights the issue of childhood obesity and why we really all have to come together and to have those resources, the support that's needed, and to advance the policy measures as well. So kudos to Seth for sharing.
Well, yeah, and I think what's so valuable about that, because it's available on the OAC website, right? So if you go to obesityaction.org, you can read Seth's story and even his mother's story. Definitely go to the donate page as well to donate. But it really speaks to the importance of the lived experience, and so, especially from somebody who's younger, where all of these reports that always come out about obesity, and we're going, we picked on the CDC report a little bit. They again, it's here's the problem, but to actually connect it with somebody like Seth and his mom, really, I mean, I read his story, definitely pulls at the heartstrings, and it makes it real. And it makes it something that you understand that, okay, we got to do something about this.
And to support all of this, you can do this by a tax-deductible donation to the OAC for our efforts. You can do this at obesityaction.org/donate. We really appreciate your support in this measure. And of course, this month really brings that to the forefront, but it's something that's worked into our mission each and every day. So we appreciate your contributions with that. But, I do think this all kind of segues into our main discussion today, and we're going to get Dr. Rebecca Pearl on in just a second. But really, today is all about childhood obesity and also the impacts of bullying and that. So we have a poll that we want you guys to take to give a little insight to this and keep this conversation also going in the chat, because we can see some of your reflections and such. So maybe, James, why don't you talk about the Menti poll?
Yes, so we did this last time, right? It was a little bit, it was kind of fun. We did who's your favorite host. I think Christy won. I'm still getting over that, but
it was all my mom. So
today it was all. Today's a more serious poll. So we want you to go to menti.com. That's the website that you're going to go to. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your laptop, tablet, whatever you're doing, and you're going to enter code 61057966. You can see the code on the screen there as well, 61057966. Tell us if you experienced weight bias or bullying as a child. Where did you experience it? Are the choices, I think, here are in school by your peers, family, was it in healthcare? And then again, we have school teachers here, because we actually have heard through our public surveying here at OAC that oftentimes people will say, well, I was bullied at school. And we often think, well, that must be another kid that's bullying. But we know that's not true. I mean, we've heard stories of teachers bullying children as well. And it really just speaks to how pervasive weight bias can be, especially for kids. So go to menti.com, enter in that poll code, and please answer the question, because we're going to talk about the poll results with Dr. Pearl in just a little bit too.
We'll see those in a second. So I think we'll segue and keep doing, you can do that poll anytime, so keep those results coming in. But let's talk about the issue of childhood obesity. And I think it's important to talk and distinguish that childhood obesity and the epidemic, that those call it, is different than weight-based bullying. But just a couple statistics that we know that childhood obesity affects more than 18% of children, and so it's making it the most common chronic disease of childhood, which is just astounding. And it goes without saying that child obesity is not about eating less and moving more. Right, so that's something that we as an organization believe, and we try to kind of move beyond that narrative. And those common things we talk about, less screen time, parents need to be more involved. We're going to talk about all this with Dr. Pearl in just a second. But it truly is something. But if you talk about bullying,
the offshoot, are different, right? The offshoot of childhood obesity is then the bullying that comes along with it. And so when we look at the bullying, we know that at least 30% of girls and 24% of boys have reported peer victimization, right? So being bullied by peers at school. And weight bias is different for children than it is for adults, right? So I think at OAC, we always talk about bias in the realm of adults, but then we're going to talk about a little bit in children. And I also think what's interesting, we had a conversation with Dr. Pearl leading up to our talk today, also the internalization of weight bias for children, and how does that stick with them throughout life. Very, very interesting stuff we're going to talk about with Dr. Pearl in just a moment.
Well, let's go ahead and bring her on, but I do want to encourage that conversation, your own experiences, reflections. It's a great place to share them. It's helps others too, because they're probably not alone. But with that, I think it's time we bring on our expert for today. And so we're pleased to welcome Dr. Rebecca Pearl. She is an assistant professor at the University of Florida Department of Clinical and Health Psychology, and as mentioned, she is one of those go-to experts on weight stigma.
Yes.
And has been a convention speaker and involved with the organization for several years now. So we're so happy she took time out of her day to join us in this discussion. So welcome, Dr. Pearl. Happy to have you here.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here, Dr. Pearl. And I think we can kind of jump right into it. I know you've been listening along with us as we started today, and we talked a lot about weight bias in children versus adults. How does weight bias and stigma differ with children than it does with adults?
Well, it can differ in a couple of ways. One, the source of stigma, who are the people who are teasing or bullying, and then also the nature of those experiences. So to start with the sources, you've already talked about in just the options for this poll that school and family are often the major sources of weight stigma for children because that's usually the center of their social world. While adults may have a broader range of different people in their lives that they may experience stigma from. So both adults and children often do report family and friends as primary sources of stigma. But as you mentioned, teachers or people in the education system can perpetuate weight bias. Healthcare professionals can also take part in stigmatizing children. There's not as much research on that as there is with adults, but certainly from clinical experiences working with adults, many do report remembering experiences as children of receiving harsh words from a doctor that might have been the first time that they really felt self-conscious about their body or may have prompted them to explore unhealthy dieting practices. So while there's less known about the effects of healthcare experiences on stigma in kids, it is likely that it's highly prevalent as well.
No, and I think this is why we love having you on because you're kind of at the front end of all this research, and then weight bias is a topic itself that we talk about, but I don't know if folks realize how much research happens each and every day in this field. So we're so appreciative of you imparting your knowledge. And so, we did want to take a quick peek at those survey results just to see how it supports me. You touched on all those key areas. So hopefully we can get that jumping up here to see some of the submissions. And it looks like to us that school and peers is dominating the results so far in terms of those sources.
You see a little bit of family there, but overwhelmingly really school and peers is where it seems, which I don't think is too shocking. And Dr. Pearl, you can speak to this more. I don't think that's too shocking to anybody that is really the number one place where people would have experienced, bullying and stigma as a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely consistent with what the research has shown. And also, gets at that second part of how stigma can differ for children versus adults in terms of the nature. So with peers, we see a lot of name calling, interpersonal exclusion or rejection. There can be physical aggression, as well as harassment through social media, which has certainly increased in the past several years. So some of those kinds of experiences like name calling or physical aggression might be less often seen in adults and are primarily what we think about when we think about weight-based bullying for kids.
And I think the conversation we're seeing right now during the broadcast online is supporting all of this. Patty has shared that she was bullied by peers and school nurses when she was a child.
Oh, that's actually one of the things we've had teachers when we think about the school nurse as
yeah,
well.
Yeah. So, those are those experiences you hear often about of, kind of in the same healthcare community realm that we're trying to kind of impact as well. We also have Jean sharing that she also experienced bullying at school. So,
but it sticks with you, though.
Yeah.
I think we all have those moments from childhood. You can remember being teased about something in school, and you can remember. There's a reason why you can remember it. It really does, stick with children over time. And Dr. Pearl, one of the observations that we always see here at OAC is that when a child deals with obesity, which we know leads to the bullying, it's often the child's obesity or the bullying is often put back on the parent as a personal failure, right? What's your take or research that you've done that you can share with the audience about this a little bit, in that, parents are often kind of the center of the bullseye when their child has obesity, whether it's from healthcare providers or they're being bullied and the school says, and they're like, well, what are you doing as a parent? Like,
it's the shame and blame.
It's the shame and blame directed toward the parent.
Yeah, I think this gets down to that general misperception that weight is entirely caused by behavior, right? By eating too much or being inactive. and that's completely controllable. So most people don't appreciate how much genetics plays a role in determining body weight, as well as the environment in which a person lives. And so with adults, we know that obesity is often talked about as this problem of personal responsibility. So when someone is perceived as being unable to control their own weight, they're viewed as being irresponsible. Now, children are generally not viewed as responsible for their caretaking, for their, they're not as autonomous or independent. And so that blame gets shifted to the parents, who are then seen as irresponsible parents for allowing their child to gain weight. Again, this is due to a misconception that weight is just simply the result of behavior, and it should be within the parent's control. And it also neglects to appreciate how challenging it is to guide a child's food intake, especially in the environment we live in, where they may have access to all sorts of unhealthy foods at school, the marketing that's targeted toward children. So on the one hand, weight is far more complex than eating and exercise. And when it comes to helping a child engage in healthy behaviors, it's also a really challenging environment to navigate. So I think that is at least one reason why parents are getting this blame of this misconception that it should be within an individual's control.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head in the very beginning, talking about this societal perception that it's all based on behavior and willpower, and this blame game too is one that we often like to place somewhere. And I think it's important, worth noting, we've had some great sharing as you were talking, and Dr. Brown, I think this is Dr. Alan Brown, who's also been a presenter, and you maybe are familiar with his work, but I know he's a champion of the fact that childhood obesity is a disease, just like it is in adults. And we know it's a little bit different in certain ways, but it is a disease. And I think talking about from that perspective and the complexity, I think that's the short-sightedness just to think it's just about that reduced screen time. Kids aren't getting outside playing anymore. It's so much more than that, right?
And I think you, Christy, brought it up a very interesting point too. And actually, Joe in the chat brought up an interesting point as well, is that they're two separate issues, right? So childhood obesity and then the weight bias and bullying. And Joe actually said the role of social media as a mechanism of delivering stigma is worth acknowledging. Now, this is very true. And actually, Faith Ann Newsom, who we work with a lot at OAC, she's a part of the Stop Weight Bias campaign.
Colleague of Dr. Pearl's now in some respects.
Colleague of Dr. Pearl's at UF. Faith, during the Stop Weight Bias campaign, she shared something very valuable in her vignette, which we shared last time, was that social media, years ago, social media didn't exist, right? So the bullying happened at school, but home was the safe space. Now, the bullying follows you. It follows you when you leave school. It's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, whatever it is. So just, again, recognizing how that is like really nonstop.
And I think I'm curious about your thoughts on this with internalized weight bias. We spend a lot of time, external bias is very rampant, but internalized bias, I know, is an area that you focus a lot of your research on. And so I think what Faith's story, when she shared that, was a lot about that not not only does the bullying follow you, but the internalized bias follows you. So I'm curious, you've done some research on this. So what can you say to the internalized bias within kids and how it kind of follows into adulthood as well?
Yeah, well, it starts young. So there's, been research that kids as young as preschool age already start to show signs of weight bias. They prefer leaner. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
They prefer leaner children to children with a higher weight in terms of friend preferences. And measures of internalized weight bias have been used in children as young as 6 or 7 years old, and do show evidence that these negative attitudes and stereotypes can be internalized at a very young age. And that can happen through direct experiences of bullying, or just through absorbing all the societal messages in children's media programs, in social media, through overhearing adults talk about weight in a negative way. Kids are listening, and they understand when people are giving messages about weight that are negative. And it does stick with folks for a long time throughout adulthood. So my colleagues and I have done some research showing that adults who report that their first experiences of weight stigma happened in childhood have higher current levels of internalized weight bias as adults. compared to folks who didn't have those childhood weight stigma experiences. So this has a lasting impact, it does seem.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's heartbreaking, right? But I think it's interesting the research kind of supports what we hear so much, which is, just, one thing we're trying to change. So on that note, I think we want to know, what can we do about this? We have some really very heart-wrenching stories being shared in our chat right now, and just sharing one that Mary shared, that her sisters used to bully her, telling her she would stretch out their t-shirts so they'd never let her wear them, and just that kind of like lasting.
Yeah, I mean,
lasts
look
for
at
such a long time.
Jean says here, my sister was bullied because of my being overweight. She was not even overweight at all.
Yeah.
I mean, she's like a sibling to sibling there. And I
Yeah.
think it really is an interesting way to try to round this out a little bit. So for people that are tuning in, people that are going to watch this broadcast at another time, what would you tell them if they have a child that's dealing with, obesity and bullying in school or anything like that? What kind of advice would you give them? Maybe some key takeaways for folks.
Sure. Well, bullying is very serious. It can cause psychological and physical harm. So it's important to not ignore it. I think in the past there have been messages about, just ignore the bully and they'll go away. And that's really not an advisable strategy, because it might not go away. And also giving the child the clear message that they're not responsible for making the bullying stop. That you as the adult are there to help them, that they're not alone in this, and that you're there to support them. I think, number one, just helping children feel supported and safe is the primary goal. So creating a space that they do hopefully feel safe sharing these experiences. It can be very challenging to talk about these kinds of experiences if kids have a lot of shame around them. So having gentle conversations to help children open up about it, using open-ended questions, not pushing too hard if they're hesitant, but really just communicating that if someone's being mean to them or mistreating them, then you want to know about it because you want to be there to help. They're not going to get in trouble. It's really all about helping them. And also, making sure that you're listening, you're giving them the space to share what's going on. Another important point is that it might be important to work with the school on this, especially if it is something that's happening at school or involves multiple students from the school. Schools are legally, responsible for protecting against bullying, and every school should have an anti-bullying policy. So it can be important to contact the school administrators or a trusted teacher to make sure that you're helping the school be a safe place for your child and for all children.
No, great takeaways there. And I think I remember when we were meeting about this, just really talking about this issue. One thing you also suggested was kind of having this conversation, be more proactive in it rather than waiting for the incidents to occur, right? And having that open conversation, just to talk about, any experiences, any observations from children's perspectives before any of this, really kind of comes to surface, and having that dialogue is so, so important. So I stuck onto that whenever you mentioned that in our earlier conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And that applies to any form of bullying, but certainly if you are concerned that weight-based bullying might be an issue, you can ask about specific settings in which you might be worried it's occurring, like how was gym class today?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or, in general, have you ever seen anybody else be treated poorly? Have you ever seen other people be mean to other people? Has anyone been mean to you? Those kind of open-ended questions to start to gently go into that conversation.
Well, all amazing information today, Dr. Pearl. We want to thank you so much for your time, for all of your hard work in this area, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Pearl. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.
There's some great feedback and insight from Dr. Pearl, really speaking to the severity of this issue and what people can do about it. And I think people watching right now, they're maybe asking, well, what can they do right now?
Yeah, and certainly, there are so many things that Dr. Pearl pointed to, supported by research. I think that's something important to note. OAC would, we're trying to be more on the front lines with these issues, especially with this awareness focus so much. I mean, I think we're trying to shift that narrative a lot. So within that, we would really appreciate your support through our donation campaign we have going on. And you can easily donate by going to our website to support this effort to reduce childhood obesity stigma, bullying, and working towards those efforts. And you can do that at obesityaction.org/donate.
Yeah, and you've heard us talk so much on these broadcasts about the OAC Stop Weight Bias campaign, a great resource to learn more about bias, and you can be part of the solution. So if you haven't checked that out yet, go to stopweightbias.com, sign up to be part of the solution, and get more involved in what we're doing to help stop weight bias, especially in children.
Yeah, and it goes without saying that education is so important.
Yeah.
We always promote this message in almost everything that we do, but in this situation, getting yourself armed with the knowledge and the facts and the statistics, spreading the word about those resources that are available. We have several to choose from at the OAC's website. You can check those out, and really just being vocal on the issue, is crucial.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we always tell people, even with adults, right? You have to be your own advocate. Mm-hmm. So you have to be the one to speak up for yourself. And if you're a parent, you have a child that's dealing with bullying in school, find out if the school has anti-bullying policies. I know my wife is a teacher here in the state of Florida. I asked her, I said, does your school actually have policies that they specifically list weight as a form of bullying? And she said, yes, they do, right? So those policies are in place. A lot of parents don't know that, right? So you have to ask your school if they have those policies in place, especially if your child is dealing with bullying. Talk to the school, talk to the teacher, the principal, the guidance counselor. I mean, there are so many resources that you can really go to try to help your child. And I think you mentioned it to Dr. Pearl, and I'm a huge advocate of it, is the communication. Yeah. You have to have that communication to know what's going on. Yeah.
And that goes with the schools as well, since
yes.
Our children spend so much time at school away from us and so much is happening. And but yeah, it's great takeaways along those lines. Be more proactive, be more vocal about this. It is okay to talk about the concept of weight. I think that's part of the problem, is that we feel like we can't really, it's because of the stigma attached to it, but this is our time to be bold. So we hope that you guys have picked up on a few key things that you can start doing to be part of this solution, not to steal your campaign for a moment,
speaking of the campaign, it's giveaway time.
Yeah, let's do it.
The items today are from
the Stop Weight Bias
campaign. And so we have our winners coming in here just in a second, but I think the mug has a saying on it, Christy, and the bag does too. Our words and actions matter. #Stop Weight Bias, right? I mean, whoever wins it, you'll see it there.
You're really teasing this one up for everybody at home.
We have great merch. And did you know if you don't win one of these items,
you can buy them.
Yes, right?
And it supports all the efforts behind combating bias.
It supports the Stop Weight Bias campaign. So it's available on the stopweightbias.com website, and you can find out more there.
Along with this mug too, we need this equality, compassion, kindness, empathy, dignity, respect. This is a perfect message to enjoy your fall cup of coffee or decaf, cocoa, whatever it is that you're choosing. So I think we have some winners coming in. The lucky winner of this cup is Elizabeth Paul. I think that's Liz Paul, great follower of OAC.
Yes.
Liz will ship this to you. We should have your address on file.
And another longtime follower of OAC, Mary Tripp.
Oh,
Mary Tripp. So congratulations, Mary.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen you in a while. I know we usually see you at
She's
convention.
a convention stronghold.
And
yes.
very, very much a convention stronghold. Hopefully we'll see you again soon at a convention.
Yes, hopefully. Well, we have so enjoyed this half hour with you, and hope that you got a lot from this. And a couple of other opportunities just to re-mention that we do have that health talk coming up here in the next several weeks. Thursday, October 14th, 7 o'clock Eastern. Go to obesityaction.org/health talks to sign up. You'll get your notifications, reminders that way, and you'll definitely want to take part. And it's free, so no reason not to attend. And you can also have some great conversation during that live stream as well on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, those are great. The one we did with Robin Pashby, Dr. Pashby, is phenomenal. Very good. I know Sarah's going to be excellent as well. Yeah. And speaking of future things, our next broadcast will be Wednesday, October 27th, and it will be spooky.
Ooh.
I have no idea what that means. Are we going to dress up for that?
Special Halloween episode. I think so. I mean, maybe comment
Do
in
we
the chat.
comment
with
in
some
the
costume
chat? What would
ideas.
you like to see us dress up as? There's some ideas floating around the office.
And I heard there's going to be a little set decor going on for spooky
Oh,
time. But
maybe.
yeah, it is that last week in October, so mark your calendar. Same time, 1 o'clock Eastern. But until then, we certainly hope you get involved in all of our efforts. Get involved in our fundraising campaign. It's so important. And keep raising your voice. Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, all those takeaways. Yep. And be vocal, be bold.
Yes, and have a wonderful afternoon. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can see them here on the screen. You're going to want to be a part of it. We thank you very much for your time today.
All right, take care. Enjoy this fall weather wherever you are. Bye-bye.